Ann Coulter and I usually agree. She's not often a naysayer, and I'm not often a naysayer to her. But she's been watching the Democrats ignore violence and vandalism as long as it comes from their own supporters. And welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here, Lars.
This is bizarre.
I can't believe you're out in Portland. Have you been down there? Have you sent any reporters?
Yeah, we have reporters who've been covering it, and ordinarily, if it weren't for the China, I've been using my home studio, and frankly, I started doing that about a year and a half ago because of the commute. 8 miles in 1 hour and 10 minutes on freeway.
Oh, wow.
It's when you. I don't know if you ever did this, Ann, when you were a kid. Did you ever drag the gut where you got in a car with your friends and drove through Main Street at about 8 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour because it was cool? You could say hi to your friends and all.
No,
I don't know if you ever.
I missed that.
That's a small town kind of thing. It's not quite American graffiti, but it's pretty close to American graffiti. We did that. I decided as an adult that I didn't like driving up an interstate freeway that's 3 lanes wide at 10 miles an hour. It ceased to be entertaining after the first once or twice that you did it. But ordinarily, my studio is a block and a half. All those pictures you're seeing all over national news now, that's a block and a half away. The Marco Hatfield Courthouse.
Been there, right?
You've been to our old studio building. That was in a safe neighborhood. This is right in the center, the heart of darkness. Yeah.
No, it's really, I've been following this for the last 50-some days. And as I indicate very strongly in my column, and I think I've indicated to your listeners before, you got to go on Andy Ngo's Twitter feed, linked in my column, repeatedly, by the way, because he's been covering, a lot of the riots, but the Portland, everything going on in Portland for years now, and oh my gosh, he is a brave gay Asian man. It's unbelievable. He's gotten beaten up. They know who he is. They dox him, his family's. But my gosh, the videos he gets. And it's, as you know, I'm a regular watcher of MSNBC, and MSNBC just is the Antifa channel. They have not been showing any of this for 50 days. So now, same thing with the New York Times, same thing with CNN. So now, when Trump sends federal agents to get control of the city, and put a pin in that, one thing I want to mention about that, it's not just the federal courthouse, or it sure shouldn't be. Suddenly they're all, gasping for breath. Oh my gosh, this peaceful, bucolic city. Why would anyone, what's going on? Why would he do this? It's as if, as I say in the column, if he were sending, and they aren't unmarked cars, and they aren't unidentified officers, contrary to the lying media, they are just lying about that. Yep. They are identified. Only their names have been taken off because these Antifa will chase them down and harass their families. They're printing their names and addresses. So they said, could we please just take our names off? But the agency, their badge number, that's all clearly visible. If they were unidentified officers throwing people into unmarked vans for not wearing masks, liberals would be cheering here. Just their raging hypocrisy. But what I particularly compare it to is, and I wish the Trump administration would pay a little more attention to this too, Republicans have to do this every once in a while when the Democratic Party is defending domestic terrorists, as they did in the case with the Klan, which, by the way, contrary to what most people think, the Klan was originally formed to terrorize Republicans. Yep. And then branched out, decades later to just terrorize black people directly. But this is part of the Democratic Party's DNA. And now, Eisenhower's a hero. All these people like Senator Russell, Orville Faubus, George Wallace, I have their quotes that sound exactly like the Democrats today. Oh, it's a military occupation. These are stormtroopers being sent to our state. No. The federal government has the authority to suppress domestic insurrections. I think I've said on your program before, it's in my book, Demonic, contrasting the American Revolution and what we got out of it with the French Revolution. The precise reason we have a constitution was because of Shays' Rebellion and the Articles of Confederation, just these 13 states that, we're friendly with one another, we trade with one another, but we didn't have one federal government. And some of George Washington's revolutionary soldiers couldn't pay their taxes. They went and they stormed the tax offices. And so George Washington, he's retired now, the war's over, he had to put together an army to go suppress this insurrection. Yep. And that's when the 13 states realized we need a federal government to put down, to assure domestic tranquility. In the first line of the Constitution, to assure domestic tranquility. And you look at these videos, Trump ought to be doing this all over the country. I'll also tell you, because you know I've been very down on Trump for betraying his supporters, the Democrat has tied itself so closely to ANTIFA, to domestic terrorists, to absolute disorder, criminality, mental illness in the streets. I now think he's going to win. I did not think so. It's all in my book, Resistance is Futile. Trump will do something stupid and humiliating, and then the Democrats and MSNBC and the media come back and say, oh, we can top that. We'll be much crazier than that. And okay, I'm back to Trump.
Yeah, now I'll tell you something, Ann. First of all, we've been friends with Andy No long before he got a national following because he was a local guy.
Of course you have.
He's a local guy, and he's come into my studio back before the China virus and all that, and he's a great guy. And you're right, he's Asian, he's gay, and he's not conservative. He just approaches stories the way reporters ought to, which is, I'll look at the story, and I'm not going to let my personal politics bleed into it. But I'll tell you how crazy it's gotten since you brought up Portland. There's a mayor's election going on right now, and the election would have been decided in May if one candidate got 50% plus one vote. And there was a whole slew of them running. Ted Wheeler is this nitwit, Harvard and Stanford educated, but he's running against a woman, Ann, who has positioned herself. She came very close to beating him. Right? It was neck and neck, right? It literally took days to determine because it was right down to 50-50. So they run off in November. She has unabashedly called herself the Antifa mayoral candidate. Now, this is how crazy it is. So the choice on the ballot is either the guy who has been the Neville Chamberlain to Antifa and BLM, or somebody who's just out and out, I will be the Antifa mayor. And that's your set of choices. It's not a good menu.
Well, not only that, and I hope Portlanders and people in other cities start paying attention to this. Your DA is a George Soros guy.
Michael Schmidt, the social justice warrior.
Yeah. So all these poor police, get beaten and hospitalized, have commercial fireworks thrown at them, to arrest lunatic thugs on the street. And then they immediately get put back on the street. There's absolutely no punishment. There are no consequences. Don't act like you're big tough guys, you skinny little Antifa twerps. You know there are no consequences. There better start being consequences.
Well, can I tell you, can I reassure you, Ann? I talked to a member of the president's staff today on the air, and one of the senior advisors, they got all kinds of titles. But I said, can you please make sure these are federal charges so they'll be brought by the U.S. attorney and tried in federal court and not dismissed by this social justice warrior, Mike Schmidt? And he said, yeah, that's exactly what we're planning. So these folks are going to be looking at federal arson charges and federal assault charges and the rest of that. I think we're going to get some justice out of this. But this guy, Mike Schmidt, he actually takes office in a week. He starts on the 1st of August. His predecessor is just as namby-pamby, Rod Underdog. And Schmidt, though, 2 months ago was telling reporters, they'd say, well, are you going to prosecute these people? And when all this started, and he started explaining, well, you can't, it's really hard to prosecute people for First Amendment free speech. And I thought, assaulting a police officer is a form of expression. Setting fire to a federal courthouse is a form of expression. That's going to be a reach. I mean, Ann, you've gone to law school. You couldn't even make that argument work, could you?
No, but he is the DA. He can do what he wants if he doesn't. This is what is happening in jurisdictions across America. George Soros figured out if we don't prosecute our stormtroopers, they can do anything. They will run riot. That is exactly what's happening. I mean, look at what is happening in Missouri. They will not, all of the rioters were released, but that couple defending their home with guns, they're being indicted. That is what's happening all over the country because of George Soros and jurisdictions, wherever you are, wherever you're listening from, watch out. Watch out for the DA's election and do not forget to vote.
Her latest book is called Resistance is Futile. She is Ann Coulter and a great friend of the Lars Larson Show. Coming up, 3 American citizens would be alive today if former President Obama had put America first. We'll talk about the details of that story in just a moment.
We will make America great again.